Matt, you're on mute.
Welcome everyone. I did a whole speech. I want to welcome everyone to the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce Technical Assistance Workshop in partnership with Jackson Health. This is a part of a monthly technical assistance partnership that we have with many of our partners, Jackson, Career Source, Miami-Dade, and quite a few others, to ensure that more businesses are able to engage and take advantage of resources from many of our partners. This is a two-part series we've been doing with Jackson Health called Prime for Success: How to Submit a Winning Bid. We are going live on Facebook, so that those who want to join on Facebook, feel free to click the link to register. For those that are on Zoom, if you want to share this information through social media or the Zoom link, please feel free to do so. We want to make sure that people get this information and know how to take advantage of these resources. So with that, I would like to bring on our president, Eric Knowles of the Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, to welcome you to our institution as a chamber. Mr. President.
Well, good morning, and thank you everyone for joining us this morning. Matt, thank you for keeping us moving in the right direction. Amber, I can't thank you enough for all the engagement that you continue to do with the chamber and the chamber's members. The last conversation that we had was so engaging, and I know so many folks learned so much and garnered so much. And obviously the panelists, I want to thank you all for the information. You all have been in the trenches for years, and thank you for sharing your knowledge and expertise as we bring this information to our members and others in the community.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. President. And I would like to bring up our all-star partner at Jackson Health, Ms. Amber Lawhorn. Welcome, and thank you for bringing this distinguished group of people together to provide this information to our constituents and those who are there, making sure they try and take advantage of these government contracts and just grow their businesses. So welcome, and thank you for joining us today, Amber.
Thank you, Matthew. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. And the Chamber is one of our strongest community partners. You help us to reach a segment of the community that needs this information. And as I always mention, I always ask Matthew, what do your members need to hear from Jackson? So this is how we developed this series. Our last episode was, as Eric mentioned, very engaging. There was a lot of information covered, but I even learned some information. So I'm excited for us to continue this series and discuss how to submit a winning bid. So with us today, we have some experts from the vendor community, as well as an expert from Jackson. And I'd like to take a moment to allow them to introduce themselves. So we'll start with Kenneth Robertson.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Kenneth Robertson. I've been with Jackson for 7.5 years to procure our capital program. We've been undergoing a $2 billion reinvestment in the health system. And my role specifically is the Director of Procurement for Construction Services. So specifically, I advertise and award the health system's contracts for architectural and engineering services, construction, and any type of operating systems to keep our mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems working in the hospital. So it's my pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Ken. And next we have Benjamin.
Good morning. My name is Benjamin Essien. I'm the president of EBS Engineering. And again, thank you for inviting me to be a part of this exciting discussions about winning a bid. EBS is an engineering company. We've been involved with the county and now Jackson Hospital for many years, and we continue to do that. Again, my name is Benjamin, and my position is as a principal and the president of the company. So I would be happy to share my experience as we go along. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Next, we have Miss Margaret.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Margaret Anglin, and I am the owner of Mr. Wireman Electric. We are electrical contractors licensed in the state of Florida. And I'm excited about sharing this morning. Like Amber I learned some stuff last time, so I am looking forward to the conversation this morning.
Thank you, Margaret. And we also had a representative from DLFC Architects slated to attend, but they did have an emergency at one of their customer sites. So unfortunately, they won't be able to join us today. Nevertheless, let's proceed. We want to fit as much information in as possible. So we'll get started with the presentation from Jackson Health System. Ken will share his experience from the customer side, from the government agency side, in terms of how vendors should strategize and the tools they should employ to submit a winning bid. Ken?
Perfect. Next slide, please. So when you're looking to do business with Jackson Health System, we traditionally issue 3 different types of bid solicitations. For small contracts under $250,000, that's our formal bid threshold. So anything under $250,000 is considered informal. Traditionally, we would issue a request for quotes for something of that magnitude. For contracts over $250,000, we would post an invitation to bid, where if we would like to select a vendor based on lowest responsible price. To do that, we would either need plans and specifications if it's a construction contract, or we would need a really defined scope of services with deliverables defined by us before we would put that out on the street. Alternatively, we could issue a request for proposal if we somewhat know what we want and we can put some basic requirements into a document, but we're really looking for industry feedback on what the best solutions are. And that selection is based on total adjusted score. So not just price, but we would consider quality, experience, and other factors in determining which of the proposers has the highest score in response to that RFP. Next slide, please. This website is very important. We post all of our bid solicitations on our supplier portal. So we have bookmarked this nickname website. So if you just type www.jacksonsupplierportal.org, it will take you to our online system where our procurement buyers post opportunities there. It also allows you to register with a free account to let Jackson know what types of opportunities you're interested in hearing about. That is a very simple process where you just complete a simple registration user profile. You would create a password, and the system asks you to identify which commodity codes you do business in. So if a procurement buyer is working on a solicitation and the commodity code for that event matches your business profile, you are automatically added to the event. We have a feature where we select the commodity code, and there's a button we select called Get Suppliers, and our system will automatically attach everyone who is interested in that area. So it's fairly easy to do. It's free for all users. And if you would like to respond to an event, the system allows you to submit a bid in response to those events online. But to do so, you need to be logged in to your user account. So you can go to the website and view events without being logged in. But to respond, you need to log in with your username and password in order to create your bid response. And then it's very important to submit that when you're done. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. This is a sample of what an RFQ looks like. So at the top, you'll see the title with an event number. And so the numbering system starts with the year first. So this is 2021. So we would have an RFQ beginning with 21. The middle numbers are our internal tracking system for awards. And then the last 2 letters are the buyer initials that are working on that event. In this case, it's Rolando Jerez. And so the procurement agent's information is listed right under that with a telephone number and an email address. And then we'll specify a bid deadline and how to respond. There'll be a link. And that is another way to get to the supplier portal. There are a couple different URLs you can use, but we like to use the jacksonsupplierportal.org one. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So on the portal, there will be a number of attachments that you can download in your offices. In the past, when we issued large construction bids, companies would have to come to our office to get a CD with the plans and specifications on it, but we no longer have to do that because we can post everything on the portal. So you can download those documents from the comfort of your office or your home office and have immediate access to the specifications manual and the signed and sealed plans for whatever we're building. If it's not for construction, the RFQ or the bid document would have a scope of services section in section 2 traditionally. There may be a section regarding minimum qualifications. This would list potentially if there's any type of SBE measure or set aside measure and to what level that applies. For our informal construction bids at Jackson, nearly all of those are set aside for SBE vendors in Miami-Dade County. There's plenty of availability in the general contractor, mechanical, plumbing, electrical areas, HVAC. There's a lot of certified firms in these areas, so traditionally we set those aside. And based on the value of the contract, that would warrant either a level 1 or a level 2 or a level 3 set aside. And so we work with Miami-Dade County to review and establish those SBE measures for each event. Depending on the type of work, it may require certain licensure. So if there's electrical work involved, or if there's any type of mechanical work where you might need a certain HVAC license or a Class A license, the document would list those items. So at the end of the RFQ document, you'll see a quote form. And so the quote form will either be a lump sum line to do all of the work for that particular event, or if we're buying commodities, it might have several lines of different items that we'd like to buy, and we're looking for unit prices for each of those items. So just be careful to look at how the bid form is set up so that you know what we're looking for, either a total lump sum price, or we're looking for a unit price that's to be multiplied by certain quantities, and the form will have that information for you. A key piece of information to consider before you submit your bid is to acknowledge amendments that may have been issued during the bid process. This is very important because an amendment can formally change the language in a bid. So if you have not reviewed the amendments, it could materially change the requirements of that event. So it's important that you review and acknowledge those amendments, especially if the bid form itself is changed. I've administered many procurements where through the Q&A period, it was discovered that certain line items on the bid form should either be added, or perhaps we wanted to have an add alternate line, or perhaps we were going to have a contingency allowance for certain scope that's not really well defined. And then the bid form was updated and redistributed to everyone through an amendment. But then when the bid closed, certain bidders used the original bid form and did not use the one that was updated with the correct line item information. So that's very important to make sure you're using the most current version.
Did the give you the receipt? Yeah.
And so the event itself will attach any required forms that the bidders are to submit when you enter your response in the portal. And that varies. So if it's an informal bid, there are not that many forms. When bids go over the $250,000 threshold point, there are more forms required because we are an agency of Miami-Dade County. So there are certain affidavits that we're required to request regarding the type of business you are, how many employees you have. Perhaps the contract is subject to responsible wages. So there are a number of affidavits that may be attached to an event, but we don't want those to dissuade you from responding. Those are standard forms that all county departments must attach to their events, and so Jackson is no different. And we would provide a listing of those so that it's easy for the bidders to understand what forms we need. So with that, we'll go to the next slide. So I'm often asked the question, how can I be better prepared to respond to a bid? And one of the biggest sources of information that will help you is what Jackson is currently paying for the services we're advertising. So if it's something that's fairly well defined, you can request a copy of Jackson's current contract for those services. And that will have a tabulation that's probably from a couple years ago, because if we're re-advertising it, we're probably wanting to enter into a new term. So the prior contract could have been for a 2, maybe a 3, 4, 5-year period. So it's very important to have information that is relevant to the current bid. So if Jackson's currently paying a $60 hourly rate for a certain set of services, if you know that information, you know where to be competitive for the current bid, and you could look at recent economic indicators to see if that $60 should go up or down when you're responding. During the event timeline, when the bid is open for questions and answers, this is very important. We need your feedback. So the procurement agents, we procure everything for the whole health system. So we're not necessarily technical experts in every individual area, but we work with our user departments to define the event in as much detail as we are able to. But if you are the experts in this industry, and that's why we're seeking bids from you. So when you're reviewing the event, if you read something and it doesn't make sense, we want you to email the buyer working on the event and pose a question. This helps both you, it helps Jackson, it helps all the bidders that are interested in the contract, because we can bring clarity to your question. But if we don't know that there's confusion, or perhaps that something needs to be clarified, we won't do so. So it's really the questions that drive amendments. And we have actually had to reject bid solicitations where questions were not asked, and perhaps the scope was unclear or vague in certain areas. And then when the bid closed and we received bids, certain questions came up in our review of the bids, and the entire solicitation had to be thrown out because there wasn't adequate vetting of the Q&A process. So that happens on occasion. The Q&A process is intended to create a better contract, both for you and for the owner. So we encourage you to take advantage of that opportunity. If the event has a pre-bid meeting or a pre-proposal meeting, we would certainly encourage you to attend. Our standard practice is not to make these mandatory unless there's some specific reason to do so. So if the work is in a restricted area of the hospital where you wouldn't otherwise have access, so for example, if we're changing out a roof air handling unit and we need our bidders to be able to go up to the roof, that type of pre-bid meeting would be made mandatory, because we need you to go see the site conditions on the roof, and you would not otherwise be able to know of those conditions unless we took you there. And so that also helps with crane rentals, and where perhaps you could position a crane when you're bringing the unit on top of the roof. So in that type of event, we would make the pre-bid mandatory, but by and large, most of the events are recommended, but not mandatory. We recently completed a bid for our new freestanding emergency department. We're building a new ED in Coral Gables, right on Southwest A Street. And when we were doing that bid, I was very pleased with the quality of the bids that came in, because in the bid document, we included a checklist of all forms in order that needed to be included in your bid package. And really the idea was, let's create a document where all the bidders can just check off items 1 through 15 or however many number it is. And all of the bids came in full compliance. Everything was in order. All of the forms were there. And so it was really good feedback for me that the bidder community understood 100% exactly what we needed back from them. And all of the bids were responsive in that regard. So for the method of submission, this is important. If the event says that you must respond in the supplier portal, that system is a sealed bid environment. So when you submit a bid in the portal, the buyers cannot see your bid while the event is still open. When the event closes, the buyers can go in and see the tabulation, but those results are not available to them until the minute it closes. I say that because if the method of submission is in the portal, we cannot accept an email bid. So if you email your bid to the buyer a couple minutes before the event closes, that is not a sealed bid, and the buyer can't accept that because it's outside of the sealed bid environment. We have had that happen on occasion. And I think in part that happened because the bidder logged into the system too late to allow adequate time to complete the bid in the portal. So I would definitely make sure that you allow at least an hour before the bid due date and time to make sure you're in the system, your bid is entered there. And at the very end of that platform, when your bid is 100% complete, there is a submit button. And I say this, it's very important. We've had events close where bidders thought they responded to the event and their bid was in draft status. They never clicked the submit button. The event closed and Jackson never got their bid because it was not submitted. In the system, we can see that the status was draft. We can see that it never came through as a sealed submission. And so when we read the bid results aloud, that company was not included because they hadn't actually submitted the bid. And so it created a little bit of tension in that one scenario. And so it was a little bit of education that was needed, that their bid was 99% complete. They just needed to click the submit button to transmit it. So that is very important. I would like to mention that for everyone. And of course, if you have any questions, or if you're having technical difficulties in the portal at all, please feel free to call the procurement agent that's listed in the event. They are there to help you. They can help you create a profile. If you don't have a registration right now and you just want someone to talk to help you guide you through the process, they certainly can do that. They can add you to an event. So if we've published an event yesterday and you hear about it through the chamber, then you can go to our supplier portal, register, and then contact the procurement agent because they'll attach you to the event, and then you'll get email notifications of future amendments. So if you're not attached to the event in that way, you won't be kept updated about the changes to that event. So we encourage you to certainly do that. Next slide. And so Amber, is this your slide or you want me to cover this one?
I can cover it.
Perfect.
I can cover it. So we just want to mention, as an agency of Miami-Dade County, Jackson does participate in the county's Small Business Enterprise Program. Kim mentioned earlier, if there's a measure or if the opportunity is set aside specifically for Miami-Dade County small businesses, then this certification would be very advantageous to a proposer. So the program certifies vendors in 3 different categories: goods and services, construction, and architectural and engineering. And the certification is issued through Miami-Dade County's Small Business Development Division. Miami-Dade County only accepts the certification that it issues. It does not accept any other certification to participate in a contract measure related to the SBE program. So that's very important if you're interested in doing business with Miami-Dade County or Jackson Health System. It doesn't preclude you from doing business with either agency if you don't have the certification. But again, if any measures are included that are related to SBE certification, Miami-Dade County's specific certification would be the only certification applicable for those opportunities. And you can confirm that you're an SBE via the county's website. You can also apply for SBE certification via the county's website. And that information is here, mdcsbd.ms.gov. gob2g.com, and I will plug that into the chat momentarily so that you have that information as well.
So Amber, there is one question that's been posed by an attendee. I can answer it if you like, or I'm not sure if there's a time later in the event to answer
There's
questions.
a time later, but if you want to go ahead and take that opportunity now, that's fine.
Sure. If everyone can see, there's a question posed by Alejandro Quintas, and it's thanking everyone for organizing this presentation. My company offers a very niche service. In fact, we only have one competitor. Our main clients would be governments at a county or local level. How can we start working with government agencies if the bid is designed to be awarded to a specific company? So thank you for your question. So at Jackson in procurement, our role is to make sure that the scope of services and the specifications are neutral with regard to the company that may be responding or companies that may be responding to the event. What we call that is restrictive specifications. In the public sector, we discourage, dissuade, and push back on restrictive specifications. We want to make sure that the bid is open as it can be to encourage competition. And so what I would encourage in that situation, if you are viewing an event and you feel that the specifications are skewed to favor a particular company, that's where you would use the question and answer process. It's very important at that point that you reach out to the buyer, the procurement agent, with a question and identify key language in the event that makes you feel that the event is being restricted to a certain company. We will investigate that very seriously. Our intent when we post an event is to make sure that there's fair and open competition. We don't want there to be specifications that are being interpreted to be favored toward one particular company. And so that's how I would answer that question.
Thank you, Ken. I agree. And we also have Mr. Ben is on. He participated in that process. Not that the information was skewed towards a particular vendor, but he did challenge in one of our solicitations, one of the requirements, if it was really necessary, for the services that we needed. And come to find out, he was correct. That like Ken mentioned earlier as well, if our bid specifications don't lend themselves to the vendor community and we don't have that dialogue with the vendor community, it puts both sides at risk. It puts the agency at risk for not receiving what we need, but also the vendor community at risk for not being able to participate. So I support exactly what Ken said. Do participate in the question and answer process, challenge those requirements so that it can be open and fair competition for all. Thank you, Kim, for your presentation. We'll jump right into our panel discussion. We have Deborah is on, and I would like for her to introduce herself if she can.
Yes, I can.
Great.
Well, this is probably rule number one. Try out your Zoom call before the Zoom presentation. That's the best advice I can give. We were at a school site and didn't realize they were blocking all the internet as long as I stayed on that campus. So anyway, I am an architect. I have about 40 years of experience. I go after federal, public, and private projects. And so Matthew asked me to join the panel so that we could contribute from sort of the consultant point of view and maybe give you some lessons learned. Because as he just mentioned, when you miss one by 3 minutes as you're trying desperately to upload to DemandStar or to whatever avenue is the way you upload your proposal response, you learn always to prepare ahead after that. So we come from it from a different point of view.
Thank you, Deborah. So I'm going to ask, I know Deborah is a challenge for her to show her video. I'm going to ask Ben and Margaret if you could turn your video on so that we can engage in this panel discussion. So we have a few questions that we are going to ask the panelists. We feel like, this is some of what our attendees may want to hear, but we're really just interested in their experience in participating in government bidding and providing their perspective and expertise on the process and what you all can do, our attendees can do to successfully participate. So Margaret, I'll start with you. From your experience, what 3 aspects of submitting a bid are or have been the most intimidating?
The biggest challenge that I have seen is the amount of or should I say the size of the paperwork that you have to go through. It is challenging and intimidating because sometimes the language that is written within those are not, we're tradespeople. We're not very fluent in legal languages. So that is a challenge that I would say for all small business, for any business that is looking to go into government contract, is to be able to read your documents and seek help for things that you don't know. One thing that I wanted to point out is when Ken talked about the mandatory, just the pre-bid meetings and or asking questions. Sometimes we sit back and because the document is so much, we get intimidated and we shy away from it when all it takes is just ask a question. And I have to say the government agencies are there to help. I have found them to be very helpful when I have asked them like, hey, what does this word mean? Or what do I put on this line based on the documents that you've given me? And has gotten help. So my thing is the documents, not being intimidated of those things.
Okay, so the documentation for you, Margaret. Deborah, from your experience, what has been the most intimidating aspect?
Well, basically the competition. You can see how many people have downloaded the proposal. And when we see 42 firms have signed on to download the proposal and we're 1 out of 42, we get a little intimidated, especially when the larger firms are applying that we can't compete with because we're a small firm. We also find it equally intimidating, the size and the quantity of pages we have to read. Sometimes it takes us a while to realize that we don't qualify or we do qualify. So the most important thing is to read it first, because you might get too far into responding before you realize, wait, this one isn't for me. I need to wait for the next one. And then the third difficulty for us is experience that reflects what's requested. I own my own company now, but I worked for 30 years before I owned my own company. And many of the questions ask for your firm experience, not the personal experience. So it makes it very intimidating. But what we found is that we may get some points off, but if you don't submit and try, then you won't get anything. So we will still try, but we find those are our biggest challenges.
Thank you. And I appreciate what you said is read the document and see if it's actually the right opportunity for you. Sometimes we end up intimidated because it's not the right opportunity that we're pursuing. So thank you for sharing that. And Ben, what has been an intimidating aspect of participating in government bidding for you?
For me,
it's for Ben.
Oh,
for Ben.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. Yes. Yes, I found some of those, but I think at the beginning, when I started out, yes, Deborah, I worked for another company for many years. I didn't have, what was the most intimidating was the fact that, like Ken said, you can talk to the government procurement agents, but to be able to talk to them and have a good information out of it, you have to have some knowledge of them or what their roles are and all this. So as somebody who's coming into the system from maybe doing work for the private sector, it's always intimidating because you don't know this agent. You don't know whether you need to talk to the project manager or you need to talk to the agent first to know when the project will be coming up. So these are challenges that I think particularly can actually affect any small business, because you don't know who to talk to. You know that there is some work that is being done in your field, by Jackson. But at the same time, you look at the Jackson website at this time. In the older time, there was no Jackson website. So you look at the website and you try to reach these people. Sometimes Jackson has done a good job. Amber will respond, but some government agencies don't respond when you leave a message. You send an email, they may not even respond because you are not the only person that sends email. There may be a few others that send the email as well. So it can be very intimidating to, break in, and that is why I said Jackson seems to do a very good job because you respond, you actually return phone calls, you return emails. Some other agencies, it might take you years to be able to break in, to have somebody return your call so that you can have pre-proposal information. That is information about this contract before it's advertised, before it's out there for everybody to compete. Now that Deborah said, yes, you go out, it's intimidating again to see that you're going to compete with everybody else that have access, that has done this before, and you're just coming in new. So it can be. And then you look at the paperwork. Even after the federal government paper reduction acts, come on, we still see proposal of 100 and something pages. And small business seems to be very challenging, but I think that you have to start from one source. You have to read the document, like everybody says. You have to find a way to make the contact work for you, and ultimately you succeed. So you have to be persistent. I think that's what's the key here.
Thank you, Ben. And I think you mentioned something that when you're looking to do business with the government, there are a lot of requirements which lead to the documentation being so voluminous. But as government agencies, there are also people in place to assist you through the process. So our process is different than a public organization. We have to share contact information with certain individuals involved in the process. We have to have pre-proposal meetings for the vendor community to attend and learn more. We have to have a question and answer period. So really engaging with the process. The process is available for you to engage with. And I think we heard from our panelists that it may seem intimidating, but like Margaret said, if you ask the question, you can get the information that you need. And Ben brought up a good point. Everybody is emailing everybody. So really do identify those diversity professionals within your organization whose role it is to help you through the process so that they can connect you and make sure that you get the response that you need. Okay, the next question is, what are the components that small and minority businesses, excuse me, should pay the closest attention to when preparing a response to a government bid? Ken talked about forms, he talked about questions from your experience. So Deborah, we'll start with you.
Oh, okay. Well, number one, read the instructions and make an outline form and assign responsibility. Like in our office, we might have one, we don't have a dedicated PR person. We're architects and we're trying to put together our response. So I might assign one person is in charge of the table of contents and the forms. The second person is in charge of the content of resumes. And the third person is in charge of whatever else is asked, so that you have a clear list of the requirements and then who's going to do what. And then a time yourself. So like 3 days before it's due, you want to have everybody recheck each other's work. What we find is most important is silly stuff like grammar and spelling. If you give the impression that you don't care about the submittal, that you didn't fix your spelling, or you refer to a different project, that does not go over well. And make sure that you really answer the number of pages. A lot of times it's gray in there, but sometimes they're very specific, 40 pages or 20 pages. And if you don't follow that, you get thrown out. And again, I can't caution enough, If you have to drive somewhere an hour to drop it off, give yourself 3 hours. We have had staff get a flat tire on the way. We've had a rainstorm on the way. So don't wait to the last minute to submit. So that's our recommendation.
Awesome tips. Very, and I mean that outline form and assign responsibilities. That's the first time I'm hearing that. Like I said, I learned things on these webinars, and that's really exciting because we talk about the documentation, the bids being so intimidating, but if you're a part of a company and there's other personnel available to help you, don't take it on alone. You know, spread the wealth out to everybody that can be a part of assisting with that process. Great tips, Deborah. Margaret?
I'm going to echo most of what Deborah has said. For us, we have a template of basically when we want to respond to something, it's one person is assigned to look for the project, and then that person comes back and says, hey, this is a good project for us. That person has signed off. And then we start looking at what are all our requirements and who's going to collect that data and by when. The by when is the most important piece for us because we never prepare a bid on the day that it's due. We don't want anything being done the day that it's due. We look at a lot of factors, like she pointed out. 95 is a beast. Today it can be friendly, tomorrow it can be a monster in getting to and from. And then also to, this is South Florida, internet can go up and can go down. So you always want to give yourself time. The next thing is basic documents. All bids have some basic stuff, basic requirements within them. Make sure that those basic items stay updated. Like, don't request a certificate of insurance on the day that you need it. Make sure that those things are in place. Find out what your insurance requirements are, your bonding requirements for this solicitation. Just get everything together so that you have ample time if you have to go back to your insurance agent to say, hey, I need an increase. I need, am I covered in this? Do I have pollution? Do I have whatever the pieces are? You have to give yourself time. So I look at it like the most important factor in responding to a solicitation is time. Don't put it off for another time. Assign a date, stick to the date, and make sure that the date is far enough that if it's not completed, you have room in which to correct those things. Because to get there a minute after is very, very heartbreaking, or to get your computer hang up and only to find out that it did not make it through is very heartbreaking.
Thank you.
That would be for me.
Thank you, Margaret. When you said keep those basic documents updated, I wanted to do a round of applause. On the other side of things, we're talking about submitting a bid, but maybe you want to get paid. And I see it so many times, especially in the construction industry. The payment is ready, but the insurance is not, so that was a major key that you shared with the audience today. Thank you, Margaret. Ben, from your perspective, what should small and minority businesses pay the closest attention to?
Okay, I agree with the previous speakers anyway. Everything is important, but I said the document itself. Make sure the document is complete. That is any form that was required, because sometimes you may think certain things are not important, but it's not up to you to decide. The government agency or the institution that puts up to these things know what they need. So you don't want to be disqualified. You have to make sure that you have a checklist of all the documents, and it shouldn't be done by one person. Like Margaret said at the beginning, you can assign rules to different people, but make sure your proposal doesn't go out, doesn't get submitted before it is reviewed properly by someone else. Someone else that knows the requirements, that has the checklist. Make sure that every dot is dotted and every T is crossed. That's very, very important, because you don't want to submit a proposal or a bid that is considered incomplete, because sometimes people do that. And again, I think the other thing that you need to do is also to decide whether you are qualified to make that bid, because there may be one requirement, one specific requirement that you may not have. So that if you spend that time, that effort, and put in a bid, at the end of the day, it's thrown out because you don't meet that threshold, that requirement that was done. And you mentioned, and it was asked again, yes, you can actually question whether a particular requirement is necessary for work that is going to be done under the project. You can do that, and you can do it successfully. So if you're a small business and you know that there is a requirement that you don't have, or maybe an insurance threshold that you can't meet, make sure that you address that first before you go into the process of putting together the paperwork and all that. And if you do put the paperwork together, the key thing is to make sure that it's complete. Okay.
Thank you, Dan.
And responsive. Thank you.
Thank you. That absolutely make sure it is complete. Ken mentioned earlier, there are forms that are just, you have to sign them just as acknowledgements. They're requirements from Miami-Dade County. They may have nothing to do with the bid itself, with the service that's being provided, but they're a form that's a part of the package, and they have to be completed. And if they're not completed, your bid may not be considered responsive. So that is very important. Thank you for sharing, Ben. So we're talking about how to submit a winning bid. And sometimes we can lay out all of the winning strategies, the best practices, but it's not real until you get involved. So none of us are perfect. And I can only imagine we've all applied for something and not been selected. So I want to ask our panelists to share with us when an opportunity or a time that they made a mistake when submitting a bid, and what was the outcome? Were you able to rectify the mistake? Was it something where you just had to accept the loss and move on? Margaret, I'll start with you.
So for me, and I started laughing as soon as you said that. I had an opportunity to submit for a continuing contract with another one of the hospital district, and I worked on it. I was so sure that I had everything in it, and I had every piece of paper lined up correctly except the pricing sheet. And so I was so excited. I got it there the day before. I was just totally, I got this. And I went back to the bid opening only for it to be disqualified, because what are they looking at? I gave them no price. And it takes me back to the check, having a second eye on it. I know that Ken talked about, or Kenneth, I'm sorry, I don't want to call him out of name, talked about having that checklist. That's the key, because since that has happened to me, with or without a checklist in the package, whether it comes from the solicitation or not, we have a checklist. So once we have agreed that we're going to submit that solicitation, we create our own checklist. And then when we get ready to put it in the envelope, upload it, whatever the situation is, we work from that checklist. Check, this is in, this is in, this is in. And that's major important, because you never want to do that, because had I had my price list in, I would have won. So please don't do that. Check.
Well, out of trouble comes opportunity at times, and like
exactly,
you establish a process, a checklist that will ensure that doesn't happen again. And at that time, maybe it just wasn't the right opportunity. It wasn't meant for you, obviously. But it positioned you for the right opportunity in the future. So thank you for sharing that learning experience with us. Deborah, has there been a time where you made a mistake on a bid, and what was the outcome?
Well, to be honest, we have had 2 times in our history where we missed the deadline. We got there, we were 3 minutes late. One time I got lost, And so we have missed because we didn't prepare ahead. We also missed and were disqualified when we put a digital signature when it said an original signature. And frankly, once when it said a digital signature and we put an original signature. So signatures, where you sign, how you sign, we got thrown out for that. Um, but mostly, those are the only times we've been thrown out and not be considered. We have at times made a mistake of putting the wrong name of the school or the county project in one of those standard forms. You have to be careful if you prepare them all ahead that you make sure you change the name for each submission, each project number. And all we could do is apologize at the interview. And we did get one of those jobs. So it was, you know, as long as you take responsibility for whatever error you make and you come up with what you can do to fix it, that's most important than just not taking responsibility for something that's missing.
That's an excellent point. You know, some circumstances you're going to make a mistake that cannot be rectified, but in the case where you can, owning up to the mistake is a part of the solution as well. So that's really important. Thank you, Deborah. Ben, tell us about a time you made a mistake and what happened.
Oh, we have made so many in a period, but one of the common one, I think one of the one that probably impacted us the most, two of them I would discuss. One of them was we submitted to Miami-Dade County a long time ago, I think probably more than 15 years ago. And we discovered that we put the project personnel, and we also provided, because it's an engineering work, so you have to provide their registration and all that. So, and in one case, we didn't provide that registration. It wasn't for the other staff. We did provide the registration, but we did not provide the registration. So apparently it was not a corrected mistake. So in that case, bid was considered not responsive. So those are small things, but we've had, in fact, recently we had a situation where we had a correctable mistakes, you know, whereby they asked for the number of employees and we actually forgot to put in the number of employees. In that case, they called us back and said, oh, what is the number of employees? And they put it in there anywhere. And I think the other one was also in terms of trying to do things and submit the package in timing. And this was a federal contract with the HUD in Atlanta. And Wilma, I think it was Wilma or one of the two hurricanes that happened that year. I wouldn't be too specific. I think it was still Wilma, or what was the other one that went to New Orleans, Rita, you know. So we prepared the package. We had it almost ready. We were going to go deliver it, but because of the logistic of the airport being shut down and all that kind of thing, we decided to go with delivery with FedEx or one of these other agents. I'm not sure again, but I think it was FedEx. And they gave us an assurance that it would be delivered. We did everything, we put everything, postmark everything, and we gave it to them. And they told us it would be delivered the next day, but it wasn't delivered until about a week later. So that was a very costly one, and we learned from it. And if I had to do it again today, I would have boarded the plane and go there myself. Anyway, so that was very costly.
Wow, that's a hard one, you know. Yeah. But it is, you know, when we talk about responsibility, accountability, sometimes the people that are supposed to always show up, they don't, you know. So we have to take matters into our own hands to ensure that success. But one of the things that I feel came out of this particular discussion is when you talk about being intimidating, submitting a winning bid, you know, everything doesn't necessarily have to be 100% right. Maybe there is opportunity, and I feel that government agencies do offer opportunities where possible, you know, and where fair to other submitters, you know, they may offer opportunities to correct those small mistakes. It doesn't mean that you should just send it in and hope for the best. You know, there are some things that are not correctable, but in some instances, there are things that are correctable. So even if you don't feel 100% confident, Deborah mentioned it earlier, apply anyway, just to get even the experience so that you know what to do when the right opportunity comes about. So we have one last question, and then we're going to open it up for our audience today. What are 2 or 3 strategies that help you feel more confident when responding to a bid? Ken talked about public records requests. We've discussed today reaching out to the procurement agents or other professionals within the organization for more information. So Deborah, I'll start with you. What helps you to feel more confident when responding to a bid?
Well, one of the things we've done with new prospective clients is we will download the successful packet, or we ask for a pre-bid meeting when it's not government, like you're not out or you can't talk. Like if you decide you want to work with the school board, for example, go in and meet the procurement officers before they advertise. They will show you examples of other submittals. Take a look at what they've gotten in the past before you submit for yours. I think that has really helped us in knowing what was a successful submission. The other thing is making sure that you have your references lined up. One of the biggest problems we have in today's atmosphere for governments is they have certain forms that require a reference name and phone number and contact. And sadly, people are switching jobs. They're no longer working there. This person didn't even know you. And it's very hard to get the required references. So what we didn't know on one proposal is they would accept the reference letter had we attached a reference letter instead of their form. And we lost out on one because we didn't submit references that we had written. We thought it had to be on that form and they had to contact that individual. But it's really important to call your references before you submit. Make sure they're still working where they're working and their contact information is correct. Because if they cannot confirm your references, you're dead in the water.
That's a very, very good point, Deborah. Very, very important. And then it also helps you feel less anxious if you already have that available and ready to go. So great tip.
Yes.
Great tip.
Thank you.
Great. 2 or 3 strategies that help you feel more confident when submitting a bid.
Ben? Okay. Is it me or okay?
Margaret.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. I thought it was Ben. I'm sorry. So the first strategy that I use is I try to stay ahead of everything. I want to know the budget. So I go to all the different agencies have, well, most of them will hold a meeting once a year to tell you what their upcoming budget has in it, what projects they're looking to get out on the streets for the year. They'll tell you it come out in the first quarter, second quarter, third quarter. So what I do is I look at, they've got a chiller coming up that requires electrical. They're changing out all the light bulbs that requires electrical. So what I do is, okay, that's not going to be ready for the third quarter. That's cool because I don't know how to change light bulbs yet. So I prepare now for changing light bulbs in the future. So when that solicitation hits the street, qualifications are in order. If there's a certain certification that I need for installing light bulbs, I've already got it. So preparation for the solicitation, I feel that is one of my biggest strengths in going after a solicitation and winning, is going to those meetings and finding out what is in the pipeline, what is coming down. And once you know that, then you can start preparing for those things. If it's a continuing contract, I noticed that when Kenneth has his stuff up, it says that, the example he used was medical uniforms. Well, it's a hospital. You guys are always buying that. That means that there is data. So then you go seek out that data as to, did they pay $1? Did they pay $1.50 last time? Where do I need to fall into this? So I feel that knowing that solicitation will come and preparing for it would be my biggest thing that I would say to any small business, is to get the information ahead of time and prepare to make sure that you fit into what you're interested in.
Prepare for success. That may be a future series, Margaret. Prepare for success. There is so much information available, and a lot of times people just don't know where to start. You know, like you said, you think we are a hospital, we buy medical uniforms. Where would you even start with that process? But like we mentioned, you know, there's a public records request process. You can reach out to Jackson, you can reach out to the county, you can reach out to most government agencies, especially in the state of Florida, where we're a sunshine state, and request information and receive it in an easy to understand manner as well. So definitely take advantage of those processes. Thank you, Margaret. Ben, 2 or 3 strategies that help you feel more confident when submitting a bid.
I would say, just like summarize what Margaret has said, preparation is the first one, preparation. Mind the contacts. What do I mean by that? The second part is make sure that you have people in the agency that you want to do work with that you can talk to. Call them before the bid is advertised. That's another case. And the third and the last is if the bid is already advertised or is not advertised yet and you are interested in the project, ask for we are in Sunshine State, you mentioned that, ask for the winning bids that, you know, was done the last time, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, ask for those. Those are the key ones that we use. The 3 things that we use is talk to the project manager, have contact and let them know. In other ways, you know, also you can go into the agency or the county website and find out upcoming projects. The project has not been advertised yet, you know, but they are going to be done. Different counties have different websites that can do that, and can just share that with us if you go to the portal. I think sometimes the portal will show project that would be happening in the future. So you track it and you follow it and you keep the conversation going and have all your things together to make sure you meet the requirement. And if you don't meet the requirement in our own field, what we do, we try to partner. We go as a sub to a bigger company or the company that may have some of the requirement that is needed that we don't have. So that's the thing. And when you are a sub, you now do the work, you have the experience, then next time you can go as a prime. And I think that is how to plan strategically to be successful, because first time you cannot go as a prime, but second time, because you have the experience, you have the knowledge of the agency, now you can go as a prime. So we get prepared. Preparation is the key. Anyway, you have to be prepared to do what is necessary to get into the system. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ben. And you made an excellent point.
Thank you.
You may not be confident the first time around because maybe the project is too big for you. Maybe you don't have all of the knowledge and experience to come in as the prime. But if there's an opportunity to still provide the services or the products that you are in the business of doing as a subcontractor, to get familiar with working for a government agency, because we can talk about how to submit a bid, but that's a whole nother aspect is working for a government agency, understanding the requirements of being on a job site, responsible wages. I know, Margaret, you have had to have some experience with that. So there are definitely things in the process that can be challenging for a smaller minority business. So maybe subcontracting is an avenue that you need to consider. Thank you, Ben, because I would not have even thought of that in this discussion, and it's such an important point. So with that, I would like to thank our panelists today for sharing their knowledge, expertise, their experience, their strategies. Margaret, Ben, and Deborah, thank you so much. I believe that there was a screen that was supposed to be shared. Matt, if you think this is the appropriate time for that?
Yes, Deborah, are you ready to share your slides?
Yeah, we made a few things. I think I forwarded it to you. So what we also found is make your presentation memorable. We find when somebody has to read I mean, think of the person on the other side. They have 30 of these to read. And if you do something different, even if you add some color, even if it's awkward, try to make your cover unique and color, because they will remember your presentation. And make the table of contents according to the reviewers. I have also been sort of on both sides. I at one time worked for the school board reviewing these things. So the most important thing to me when I'm the reviewer is the table of contents and the page numbers and where I can find all the information. So this is just some examples just to show you how you can make each one different. And that's the other thing. If you're going as repeat business to the same client, you want them to think you're giving unique attention to each project. So make a different cover. Don't keep submitting the same thing over and over again, because it really does leave an impression. And then the next slide we wanted to show you, oh, this one is the one with a go, no go. I have a good professional liability insurance as an architect, and the insurance agent has a go, no go for the project. One of the things we find is, like, I actually was ready to go for this house inspection, for example, that was advertised 3 weeks ago. And my insurance agent said, no, that's not a go. That's too much liability. Your insurance would increase by X dollars, way more than the cost of the fees you get paid. So you really want to look at the liability in comparison to the risk. And, you know, it takes a number of hours to put together these presentations. So yes, you need to have a bundle of money that you've set aside for your practice runs. You will not get the first project with each government agent. You need to make sure that you plan to go maybe 3 times before you get one, and have that knowledge before you get started. So we just wanted to show you some of the examples of, you know, of this no-go form. And RLI Insurance gave this to me, and they said it was okay to show you. So yeah, so that was it. We just wanted to show you the organizational chart is also the second most important thing. They want to know who's doing what, very specifics. If you take it too long and you write it in words, think of the reviewer. It's his 12th one he's reading. He just wants to get to the point. Make everything as clear as possible, and as less words as possible to say the same thing is more important on these type of presentations. So that was it. I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the response we've gotten on our report. Sometimes we won't get it, and then the reviewer will come up to me, but we really liked your presentation. We have another one coming up in 2 weeks. Please go for that one.
Awesome.
So I think graphics make a difference.
That's a very important point, and I'm glad for the visual. It's hard to explain that in words, so the visual was really helpful. And I think you made a very good point. At the same time, is still stick to the format. The goal should be to stick to the format, but you can definitely dress it up to make more of to make a better impression as well as a lasting impression. So with that, we're going to jump to Q&A. I know that Gloria Fonseca had a few comments in the Q&A section, and Ken would like to answer those.
Certainly, yeah. So the panelists had very good information to talk about setting up their references and making sure that reference information is current and up to date. One of the questions was regarding experience requirements, and for it not to be fair to ask for experience of the same size of a project, and that it's hard to get references for a subcontractor, that's its own process. So Jackson, as a public entity, when we review the bids, we ask for references and for experience on prior projects, because we need to make a determination of responsibility, that if you're the lowest bidder or you're the proposer with the highest score, there's a responsive and a responsibility determination that must be made. The responsibility part of it comes with us verifying references of work that your company has completed before. So we can't come to that determination of responsibility without confirming those references. So that's why we ask for them. On the construction side, we look for experience for projects of a similar size and complexity because of the bonding that's required. So if we're advertising an $8 million construction project in Florida, we're required to bond that contract 100%. So we want to make sure that the bidders have experience and can obtain a bond for $8 million. We're going to be looking for prior projects where that has been successful for you. So before we can make that determination of responsibility, it's very important for us to confirm that information. That's why we ask for those types of references. But again, procurement and the county are always looking to open up those requirements to make them less restrictive. So there's a lot of work back and forth in terms of reviewing language. Can we open that up to maybe 2 projects within the last 7 years as opposed to 5 years or 3 years? Maybe we only need 1 similar project. So sometimes we look at it that way. But the owner does have a responsibility to confirm responsibility. So that's why those requirements are in our documents. Regarding form of contract, Gloria had a question about not having attorneys working for their small companies, and that Jackson's contracts are written by attorneys, which put the bidders at a disadvantage. So I will respond to say that our construction boilerplate contract is approved by the county attorney's office, but the contract is a win-win. In order for us to solicit interest from the market, the bidders are not going to want to respond if the form of contract is so egregious that if you were to sign it, that we would not have a successful project. So our construction contract is actually very open to prosecution of the work, dispute resolution, how we come to agreement if there's a disagreement, how invoices are paid and routed. So if you go through the construction, I specialize on the construction side, so I'll speak to that. But our construction agreement is quite fair in terms of treating our contractor partners as a partner for that event. So I wouldn't necessarily say the contract itself puts companies at a disadvantage, but it is a legal document. So if you're not comfortable signing it, you should have someone look at it from a legal perspective if you should or should not sign that document. But the county attorney's office has reviewed it from the point of view that it meets all of our legal requirements. And that's very important because we wouldn't otherwise be able to enter into any contract.
And Ken, I wanted to add to that, if I may. There are vendors, and I can understand that from a perspective of a company, a small business may not have an in-house attorney to review their contracts, but there are government programs, government departments. There are also community agencies that are available to assist vendors with that process. So definitely look out in your community to identify those agencies. And some of them are at very low cost. I know of some that are at no cost. So those resources are available in the community for small and minority businesses to tap into to help with that process as well.
And then the last question was a thank you for having a checklist in the bid documents. That's very helpful. So thank you. We appreciate the feedback and we'll continue doing that.
Thank you, Ken. And I think I also saw a question in the chat earlier about where the, will this be recorded? Is it going to be available after the event? And Matthew was so kind to put a link in the chat. The webinar will be available after for review at any time, m-dcc.org/webinar-recording. So if you had to join late or you had to leave early, the information will be available after today's event. So again, thank you to all of our panelists, Margaret, Ben, Deborah, Ken. Thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing so freely with our attendees today. We appreciate you.
Thank you again,
Thank you.
Deborah, for hosting this wonderful conversation, and to our amazing members and panelists. Shout out to Margaret and Mr. Wyman Electric. that has been an amazing electrical company for our community. Benjamin is seen at EBS Engineering, and also one of our newer members, Deborah Fields of Architects. Give a round of applause and shout out to these business owners taking their time out of their day to share insight and their wisdom to help other business owners. We're trying to pull each other up as a Miami-Dade Chamber of Commerce, and that's what this webinar is here for. And we want to just give a shout out to our partners at Jackson Health and Kenneth Robertson for coming in to really share this information and bring us together so we could expand the opportunities for contractors, especially Black, minority, woman-owned contractors here in Miami-Dade County. So thank you very much, Kenneth and Amber, for taking the time to really host this webinar with us as a chamber. Always a pleasure. All right. And I do want to just quickly run through a few items before I bring on our president to close us out. This presentation, this technical assistance is a part of some things we do at the chamber to provide technical assistance. Hold on, let me make sure I got the right thing. Yep. All right. To provide technical assistance, we do provide one-on-one technical assistance along with these workshops to assist business owners on getting their back end together, helping them understand how to go through the certification process and scale so they can secure government contracting. So you can always go to m-dcc.org to our technical assistance page to find that out. One of the most amazing things that we've done since the pandemic is our small business meetup, where every Tuesday at 4 o'clock, we have business owners just like those right here on this call that come together, that share the latest information, latest resources, latest bid opportunities, and also share their best practices on various topics. So if you're a business owner and you're interested in networking, being with other businesses, building, make sure you take some time to jump on this call. You can go to our events page to register and just jump on whenever you would like. Today, we will have Legal Services of Greater Miami joining us today. This coming Saturday, we have our Little Black Dress and Pearls, which is one of our major events that we have with our Women's Business Council. We strongly encourage you to check out and basically be with the who's who of women in business and government in Miami-Dade. And next week, we have another partnership with FIU, where we're going to dive into the finances, getting your financial infrastructure together. So we're going to be talking about financial statements, budgeting, forecasting, managing your cash flow so that your business is capable of taking advantage of all these opportunities. One of the things that goes into certifications is making sure that your finances in play and that you have the financial capacity to handle these contracts. That's a big part of making sure that you are able to secure those funds. Another amazing opportunity we have with our Women's Business Council is what we call sharing knowledge between generations, where other business owners are coming on to share things like how they made their first $1 million, share their money mistakes and successes, money moves they wish they would have known, and then the last one will be being in the right room. These are all tips from literal millionaires, local millionaires that are taking the time to share their insights and their knowledge. So if you ever need any assistance, feel free to reach out to the chamber to be a part of the technical assistance program. My email and contact information is right there. I want to thank each and every one of you for being a part of this, and shout out again to our members, Jackson Health. And I'll close out with our president, Eric Knowles.
Matthew, once again, thank you for a very enlightening engagement today. I want to thank Farah and Deborah and Margaret and Ben, for bringing that information from a personal experience. And Kenneth and Amber, I can't thank you all enough for all that you continue to do to bring the information for our members, and I said as a community. So once again, I believe this is a 3-part series, right?
2-part.
Only 2? Okay, I'm ready for the 3rd part. Because this has been very good. As I said, the first part was excellent, and this has been definitely a great follow-up to the first part. So thank you once again. All
right, everyone, we take care, and we look forward to seeing you. Make sure you like the Miami-Dade Chamber Facebook. Make sure you go to our website to join our newsletter so that you're up to date with the latest information. And always give a call or shout out to Amber and Kenneth and Jackson Health, and let them know that they have some amazing business diversity and procurement people that are willing to come in and share that knowledge with us. So thank you very much, everyone, and y'all have a great day. Take care.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye,
Bye. Thank you.
everybody. Have a good day.